I am Maureen Harper, and I'm from Olds, Alberta, and I'm a CTEPH patient. I had a lump on the front of my leg, so on my shin, and it looked like an infection, so the doctors put me on antibiotics. So I did 6 weeks of oral antibiotics, 6 days of IV antibiotics, and it kept growing. So then they decided it was not an infection. So they sent me to a dermatologist. The dermatologist is like, well, that's weird. And by this point, of course, the lump is gone because that was 6 months later. And so he's like, I think it might be something else. So he sent me for an x-ray. The x-ray showed I had an enlarged pulmonary trunk. So he's like, oh, you're not mine. And he sent me to a cardiologist. Cardiologist put me on the treadmill to do a stress test. And my heart did great and my oxygen just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And so they pulled me off the treadmill. And I'm like, just give me a minute. I recover really quick. I can pop back on and we can finish this. She's like, no, you can't. And so the cardiologist is like, wow, that's weird. Let's do a VQ scan and just rule out pulmonary embolism. So make sure you don't have blood clots in your lungs. So we go and do the VQ scan. My husband and I are sitting there together and we're waiting for results. They're like, yeah, the radiologist wanted to talk to you. And so we're going to move you to this waiting room. So they moved us to a waiting room by ourselves. And then some other people got moved into our waiting room and they moved us to another waiting room. And some more people got added to that waiting room, so they moved us to a third waiting room. And I looked at my husband and went, something's wrong. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, they just keep putting us in waiting rooms by ourselves. And he's like, oh. So the radiologist comes out and says, so you've got embolisms in your lungs. And a lot. How are you feeling? I'm like, fine. I got to go see my cardiologist and he's like, yeah, you're not my patient. We need to treat you now. He put me on a blood thinner and said, you need to see a pulmonologist. And so that's how I ended up in the PH clinic. I had one meeting with them and they immediately wanted to do a right heart cath to see what was going on. And so I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. And then a little while later, we did some more testing, and that's when we figured out it was CTEPH. My doctor in Calgary actually didn't think I would qualify for the surgery, just where all my clots and stuff were. But they sent my stuff off to Toronto anyway, and it came back saying, yeah, they think they could help. I was originally booked into surgery at the end of August, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do the end of August. My daughters had just graduated. They were starting college, and I'm like, they can't start college without mom. Like, I still need to be there in case they need support or the paperwork didn't go through or whatever. And so we bumped it until October. And so it all kind of goes really quickly. You get flown out to Toronto from Alberta, and we flew out Friday, spent Friday night in a hotel. Saturday, I get admitted into the hospital to start heparin therapy and blood thinnering therapy to make sure I'm safe for surgery. And so I'm there Saturday and Sunday. Monday morning around 6:30, they come in and say it's time to go, and they roll you down, and the surgery takes 8 to 9 hours, and then you're sedated for 24 hours just to give your body a chance to recover. My husband did not enjoy that 24-hour period. I did not wake up from sedation really well. They took 3 different tries to get me to wake up, and then you start the recovery process. So we were in Toronto for 9 days, flew home, did really well for the first about week or so. And then my daughter came home from work one day and looks at me and goes, Mom, you don't look very good. And I'm like, I don't feel very good. I've got a headache and I'm just off. And she's like, all right, let's go. And she packed me off to the hospital and they took one look at me and went, well, get comfy, you're staying. And we're in a small hospital. So I spent a week there and came home for a couple days and got sick again, and that's what I ended up in the Peter Lougheed for a week. It was a bit of a bumpy ride, but at least I was home for the bumpy part of it. The part in Toronto went pretty smooth. After we did the couple weeks in and out of hospitals, I actually did really well. I was still working. I worked through the entire process, and I would work an 8-hour day, and then I could walk 4 kilometers at night. I was feeling great and doing really well for about 18 months. And then I couldn't walk anymore. They did another right heart cath and discovered that my pressures had actually gone up. And instead of CTEPH being a cure for me, they were able to get out the big clots, but there's a bunch of little clots that are very distal, so very deep in my lungs, and they can't get to those. So those ones get to stay, and I still get to have CTEPH. Medically, they call the surgery unsuccessful. So my husband and I kind of batted that around a little bit, and he's like, it wasn't unsuccessful. They took out massive clots out of your lungs. So even though my lung didn't improve and doesn't work like it's supposed to, at least those clots are out of there. So I might still have little ones all through, but I still have less clot that's in there. My angiogram before surgery and post-surgery, according to my doctor, looked pretty much the same. So it really didn't make any difference to my lungs, but at least I'm not fighting the extra clots that were in there. Medically going forward, so I'm on oxygen therapy. I'm on Adempis, which is a med specifically for CTEPH, and I'm on ambrisentan, which also works for pH. We're just trying to see if we can figure out a way to figure out my symptoms versus what my blood work says. My blood work says I'm doing real good, but going for a walk says I'm not doing real good. So not much changed in my life. I work a 40-hour work week. And I'm a pharmacy technician, so I'm on my feet all day in a very busy pharmacy. I have 3 kids. They're all technically grown-ups now. And then I have a girl guide unit, and we do crafts and activities, and we go to camps and do everything all the other girl guide units can do. And we just kind of keep carrying on like we normally would. So yeah, if I'm taking my girl guides to camp or anything, we go on hikes. And previously, I was able to carry my tank in a backpack because I didn't need as much oxygen as I do now. Now I have my tanks in a rolly cart, and it just rolls behind me. We start at the beginning of the year with, this is my friend. I call him Big Tom, and he comes everywhere with us, and he helps me breathe, and they don't bat an eye at it. And I hopefully from that, what they learn is people with disabilities can do stuff too. There's nothing holding us back. We can do whatever we want. I guess it was never an option for me that I wouldn't continue working. I've always worked my whole life. The company I was with, I'd been with for many, many years when I got diagnosed. I'd been there about 11 years when I got diagnosed. And my pharmacy team and my owner were fantastic and wanted to know what they could do to help. For a lot of the time, it didn't make any difference. I pop a couple pills a day and they don't know about it or they don't do anything about it. As things have progressed, it has changed. Like I took time off to go for surgery and stuff like that. And then, when I got put on oxygen, we put a concentrator in the pharmacy and ran tubing. And then when I could go to a tank, which was easier, I put it in a backpack and I carried it in a backpack. And COVID had hit. So when I got put on oxygen, I was wearing a mask and I wear my tubing down my front because I trip on it because I'm a bit of a klutz. Lots of customers didn't even know I was on oxygen until we stopped wearing masks a couple years ago. And then they were all really surprised to see that that's what I had been doing. But to me, it was never an option to quit because I didn't feel sick enough that I needed to quit. So as a support team, I've got my husband and I've got my 3 kids, and they've always got my back. They'll do whatever I need. So if I can't carry something, then they carry it for me. When I was using tanks at work, my son would bring my extra tanks in, so there was always tanks there for me to switch out. I've been a part of PH Canada since probably 2018 or so, but I felt like a lot of those people were sicker than I was. And so I didn't need their support, or it felt like I didn't need their support. And so I was always kind of in the background on the Facebook group, just kind of chilling and reading and seeing. And most of the people weren't working, and most of the people were having a lot of issues, and I wasn't. So I didn't feel like I needed the extra support that they had. I've always been a busy person, and I find if you're busy, then you don't have time to kind of dwell on the what ifs. PH is not my only chronic condition, and so I had brain surgery 10 years ago. If you Google the stuff, if you look it up online, it's terrifying. And in my brain surgery group, everybody's terrified of dying on the table, and I'm like, oh, that didn't even really dawn on me because I trust my surgeons, right? So through the brain surgery, through the lung surgery, neither time did it dawn on me or did I dwell on the fact that this is a life-threatening surgery, like I could die on it. During the CTEPH surgery, the PTE surgery, they actually stop your heart and your lungs quite a few times as they clean out the clots. So you're technically dead on the table because there's nothing flowing through your system. But I didn't look at it that way. Like somebody else told me, you're dead on the table. And I'm like, what? No, they're just busy working. They just need a clean field. So it's all mentally how you look at it. So I am, as a pharmacist tech, in the medical field a bit. I have some more knowledge than maybe the average person. So it didn't scare me as much as some other people who maybe not in the field. I've dealt with a lot of negative people in my life, and so I find that you can get up every morning and choose to be happy, or you can choose to be miserable, and I just choose to be happy. So I'm always kind of trying to look for the happy outcomes or the happy side of things in order to keep things positive. If you choose to be miserable, you can have a really miserable life, but I've decided to be happy and try to find the positive in everything. I'm Maureen Harper, and I'm aware that I'm rare.